All right, today I'm going to teach you how to correct bad habits using your notes. Now, I'm very, very good at creating new habits. And a downside of that is that I oftentimes develop some unwanted habits. So I'm going to teach you a tactic that I've kind of developed to help myself break a behavior pattern that I don't necessarily want in my day to day life. And it kind of revolves around this mapping concept here. So, in short, this method, first you identify the habit loop, you recognize the cue, the routine, and the reward. You map that process and what it actually looks like. You kind of analyze the habit and, think about why it happens, the patterns, etc. You plan the changes for how to correct that. And then you actually track the progress to see if it works. Now, that's a lot. I don't really do all of that. I'm going to massively simplify this into a note-taking technique. And I've made a template here. So if I expand this, we're first going to kind of dissolve these into four simplified questions. So what's the behavior that I'm trying to change? Essentially, what's the bad habit? What triggers this behavior? So whenever I do the bad habit, what triggers it? How does it make me feel? And what would I have done? What would have actually made me feel better? So this is kind of assuming that you were having some negative effect from a bad habit. And if it is a bad habit, you probably are, either in the short term or the long term. So what I'm going to do, let me get out of focus mode here, and I'm going to copy these, and I'm actually going to create a template out of it. So if I go to my preferences and templates, I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to call this bad habit mapping. And let's see, then I always like to backlink this. So I'll just make a new note. And then underneath it, I'm going to paste these questions. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do for the template, because each time we want to do the actual loop mapping, we're going to pull up the template. So let's go give that a try. So let's say I'm going to pull an example from my life currently. I've gotten back into a bad habit of scrolling my phone before bed, and it's really, really impacted my sleep because I'm an insomniac. And I'm pretty disappointed in myself for this, actually, because for a few months I had gotten in the habit of reading every night before bed, and it almost totally fixed my sleep. And now I'm back to scrolling. So let me use this as an example. So now I've got my template. So I'm going to pull that up here. And now I have questions that I can kind of come in here and answer. So, and by the way, you can either answer it in line here. You can just start typing here, or you could do it on the next line. Totally up to you. I'm going to do it on the same line here. So what's the behavior that I'm trying to change? Before bed, I've gotten in the habit of scrolling my phone. And by the way, you could do this via voice audio note, which is definitely how I would recommend this. But for the sake of simplicity of this video, I'm just going to type it out the old fashioned way. Okay, so we've got our bad habit. What triggered the behavior? So for me, I'm going to think to last night when I was scrolling my phone. And I'm fortunate in that I was consciously doing it. I was like, sometimes you're doing the bad habit, and as you do it, you know that it's bad. This was one of those scenarios where I was like, I'm watching the clock get later and later, still scrolling, shouldn't be doing this. So why was I doing that? This step can sometimes be hard, sometimes it's easy. In my case, it's pretty easy for last night. I had a very long, pretty stressful day yesterday, and I was really exhausted, and I just wanted a method to shut off my brain. That basically took no effort. I wanted to distract my own thoughts from everything that I had going on. And I just started watching, just kind of trash Instagram videos. So I'm going to put, I had a long, stressful day and wanted to distract my mind with basically no effort. So mental relief. Okay. So in the end, how did it make me feel? Now, this is really what differentiates a good habit from bad habit. So if this had a beneficial, effect on me, both in the immediate and the long term, then it would be a good habit. But it did not. It had actually both a negative immediate and a negative long-term effect. The immediate effect was that I felt worse. It didn't relax me at all. It actually made me more anxious, as Instagram often does. And in the long term, well, I guess not long term, but in this case, hours a day after, it really hurt my sleep. So I went to sleep much later, got less sleep, and it impacted my next day. So that is not great. And this is the most important step of this process, really understanding the effects that your unwanted behavior are having. And depending on what the habit is, this step can be kind of tricky because maybe you're trying to stop drinking or stop drinking so much. Well, that's a little bit hard because unfortunately, right after you have a first drink, it feels pretty good and you feel pretty relaxed. The negative effects don't come till a little bit later. It might be as soon as, a few hours after the kind of uplifting effect of the alcohol wears off, and all of a sudden you're feeling the slump and it, makes you more anxious, kind of like Instagram scrolling instead of better. It like right in the immediate moment, you think it feels better, but then you realize that it actually makes you feel worse. Also like scrolling could be sleep loss. The next day you might physically have a hangover, which would be a very obvious one, but maybe you're not really hungover. You're just kind of like cranky and, I get like a little bit more stressed when like a day after I drink, even if I'm not hungover. So this is all just to say you kind of have to think through the effects of the action and both consider the short immediate term and the more long term effects. And for something, like drinking, you could even think longer in the future for like liver health and whatnot. Okay. So then the last step, this is kind of the fun one. So what should I have done that would have actually made me feel better? So thinking back last night, well, I actually touched on this in the beginning of the video. I have already solved this and it's by reading. And I even have a book that I'm enjoying right now. It's just that in the moment, it was easier to start scrolling Instagram than open a book and start reading, which felt like a little bit of effort. But looking back, I really wish I had done that. I would have fallen asleep immediately. I would be more proud of myself because that's a healthier behavior I was trying to achieve. And it still would have distracted my mind. I actually think reading better at that than Instagram scrolling. So, and right now I'm reading a book on the history of food. So I'm going to put reading my new book on the history of food instead of scrolling Instagram. And that's it. Now we're done with the exercise. There's nothing else to do here. The purpose of this is to really just be conscious about the behavior you're actually doing and the effect that it actually has. And one last kind of fun trick here is a huge benefit of using a network note-taking app like Reflect if you can backlink. So I'm going to pull up this bad habit mapping page, and this is my demo brain. So I've only done this once in this graph, but you can see down here in the bottom, we have incoming backlinks, and this is the entry that I just made. And if I do this again tomorrow, that will show up and it will show all the entries that I've ever made for this bad habit. And what I like about this is that you can actually kind of go back in time and see your progress. So if I work on this every day, every 2 days, whatever, and I come back in a month, hopefully I'm going to see that I'm no longer scrolling Instagram before bed and I'm meditating again. And I think one of the final things I'll mention about this is that you should do this every day, or not necessarily every day. You should do this every time the bad behavior happens. So if tonight I cave and I start scrolling Instagram again, I'm going to do this exact same exercise with basically the exact same information, because I need to solidify this in my head that the results are unwanted from this behavior. I consciously know this, but I need to really solidify it in my subconscious so that my behavior changes off of it. And I think this could also work for developing good habits if you kind of, flip it. So if let's say I'm trying to develop a meditation habit, what's the behavior I'm trying to change? I mean, that's basically just why are you trying to develop this habit? For meditation, it might be mental clarity, it might be relaxation. And then, what triggered this behavior? You're going to need to develop a trigger for that. So invent one. So maybe it's when I become stressed, instead of opening Instagram, I'm going to sit down and meditate, and you're going to have to work on developing that trigger. And then when you actually do the habit, record how it makes you feel. make sure you focus on the positive mental, physical effects that it has. And this last one you can kind of skip. But I guess if you wanted to really do something for it, you could think about all the unhealthy things that you could have been doing and how proud of yourself you are for doing the healthy one. That one kind of BS, but I think that the three work pretty well. So give this a try, set it up as a template. Highly, highly recommend setting it up as a template so that once you realize you've done the habit, you can just quickly pull it up, do the exercise. And it's also kind of nice because it relieves the guilt when we cave on our bad habits, and it makes caving on something still productive. So if I scroll my phone tonight, that's not going to be great, but it's okay because I'm going to do this exercise and that's going to work towards developing better habits in my life.